Hello and welcome to the Minority Arts Appreciation Society podcast, where we're ticking all the boxes and bringing a much needed minority perspective to popular internet discourse. Today, 2021 Boxes returns. We're going back to March.
March.
With Armand Hammer's cataclysmic, apocalyptic, Haram.
But before we get there, who are we?
I'm Josh. I lead the music discussions. My pronouns are he and him.
And I'm Matty. I lead the film discussion, and my pronouns are she and her.
And yeah, as soon as I saw this album kind of released, like almost from my perspective, like without ceremony, like I feel like they announced it and then they just dropped it. Like it wasn't much kerfuffle.
Yeah, I loved it.
It wasn't much kerfuffle. And as soon as I saw it was out, I knew it had to go on the schedule, because I know that those first two Drowned in Newsom episodes were a bit harsh on you, all right, and that was not exactly your element. So I wanted to pick. Obviously, this was like one of, if not like right up there, of your favorite albums of last year, Armand Hammer's previous. Album. So I thought this is like in the pocket for you, and be like a nice kind of treat, like.
it was dude, this was a treat. I'll just go right into my context, because when I saw that this was coming out, I actually couldn't it's not like a monumental release, but there's something even more exciting about when an artist dropped last year and you're just getting into them, and then they're releasing a new album this year, and not only that, but it's a collaboration with like an acclaimed producer, who being the Alchemist in this case. So I was just so gassed for this album. This is honestly one of the first albums in a long time that I've had context for coming in, and that context is like just joy at this, because I was like, oh, cool, I just gotten into Armand Hammer. Like, it'll be nice because of Shrines of last year. That it was because of that album that I got into them. I'll wait another couple years for an album. And bro, like 3 months after I heard Shrines, I had a new one. It was incredible. I was so happy.
Honestly, I think this is like astronomically like a really big release. Even though I don't think it got the, I don't know, internet hive mind didn't give it like as much attention as I think like it deserves. Like I feel like that week kind of made a bit of a splash. Then we moved on to talk about like, I don't know, Olivia Rodrigo. But I really Jesus Christ, an Alchemist producing.
This is huge.
At a Lucid is nuts, especially like after Alfredo, the Freddie Gibbs Alchemist project. That really just like
it brought him to a height at the Alchemist specifically.
For me, it helped me like appreciate like how amazing of a producer is, because I remember like as listeners may remember, you can go back to the Freddie Gibbs Bandana review, which is very much like I liked it. I thought it was good. But
I don't see what this is all about.
I didn't get the fanatical kind of response to Freddie Gibbs, and then Alfredo was like just completely like opened up Freddie for me. I was like, oh, I get it now, and that was like so much of that was the Alchemist kind of amazing production breaking him out like that.
That is like a dream collaboration. That was just not a collaboration I saw coming. That like smooth sound that pairs so well with Freddie. That buttery, silky feeling that he brings to a recording.
There is precedence for this, I was going to say. Like, I agree. But like, I mean, again, like Alchemist, I don't understand how he does it. He just goes around and gives artists like their opus and then leaves in the night. Like, I mean, remember Atrocity Exhibition by Danny Brown? Lots of that was the Alchemist producing. So like, you can see like the fucked up experimental industrial side kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, he's always been about this. Like, he's just insane.
That's awesome.
You can't pin him down. Like, he's crazy.
That's such valuable context. That's such because wow. Because then, I mean, that totally changes from like this producer who's just really cool in his field, more to like this. Damn, what an auteur! What a fucking auteur, man!
Genuinely. Um, and yeah, like I mean, Matty gave her kind of like history with the group. Obviously, a big fan. It's weird. Armand Hammer's always been like a periphery artist for me. Well, like I was a fan of Billy Woods, like his own album. I really like Billy Woods.
Mm.
And then I remember when the first Armand Hammer kind of started popping. Like I mean, they had the race music in 2013, which I like didn't wasn't really on my radar. But I remember Paraffin came out. I was like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, I like Billy Woods a lot, and I like Lucid, from his work with Milo. For those who don't know, he did man, he rapped on a Scallops Hotel project with Milo, and they had a whole collab group together. 1 minute, let me
Oh
which didn't
wow.
makes you wonder: is there an alternate world where the Milo and the Lucid collab
Is that
outfit
Ruby
is as
Yacht?
big? Nostrum Grosses. So Ruby Yacht is
Mm.
Rory Ferrera's. So Rory, like formerly known as Milo, label outfit is Ruby Yacht.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
but Nostrum Grosses was the rap group that RP Ferreira had with Lucid. So
Uh-huh.
that's like where I knew Lucid from. So like big fan of Lucid, but like as a subset of being a fan of Rory Ferreira, right?
Yeah.
So that Armand Hammer album came out, and I was like, all right, that's cool. That's a cool album. I listened to it at some point. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And then holy shit, man, the group like kind of it was like Run the Jewels thing where the group kind of became like I think both of their main kind of imports, right? Or
Yeah.
exports rather. Uh and I was sleeping on them, man. And then you got me to listen to Shrines. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And recently I went back to listen to Paraffin, which I actually ended up liking a bit more than Shrines.
Nice.
And it was wild because like Haram, I love this album, as I'm sure. I mean, it's obvious, right?
Yeah. I love this album. Like
But I
that.
remember I was trying to think like, oh damn, this is like a Freddie Gibbs moment of like, oh, I get them now. But when I went back to Paraffin,
Yeah.
I'm like, bro, they've always been about this, man. Just like the
Yeah.
Alchemist, like it. I I think this is their best album, but it's not
Mm.
like it's not by like a landmount. It's just insane how consistently they just keep doing this.
Yeah, because I'm not gonna lie. Have you heard race music?
Nah.
Race music is fucking incredible. Race music is fantastic. I actually, with this album, cannot believe how they've just been on it from day one. And race
Mm,
music isn't just this short, concise, like little thing. It's like it's over an hour long,
mm,
and it's like hugely ambitious. It's not aiming for anything little, and it's just incredible. I actually like honestly, like, probably I might like these guys more than like Run the Jewels. Like I might like these guys more than any hip hop group. Full stop. I love them. They are just so unbelievably consistent,
mm,
and not just in quality, but in, again, ambition. Like, all of their projects feel huge and like worldly.
mm. Yeah, dude. I in terms of just how like just monumental this album feels. For me at least. It really so like with our like LP episode of Fantastic Damage, we kind of
Mm,
thought about kind of the early 2000s like New York backpacking scene and how like formative that was for like underground rap moving forward.
yeah.
And this like wave of like Rory Ferreira or Sweatshirt, Armand Hammer, like really, even like someone like Carr, like really feels like kind of an evolution of that scene kind of in
Mm,
today's climate. And it still has like the apocalyptic feeling that Fantastic Damage is just like different targets, I guess, new times. And to get like to the album itself, like holistically, uh, this I was super impressed by the versatility of Alchemist production here, because to me this album, and some of it comes through like in the title, right?
mm,
So it was like a cross between that kind of like industrial apocalyptic feeling and like a kind of spiritual apocalypse feeling. Like there's
yeah.
lots of kind of like death uh and like hellish imagery in this album, and the beats kind of move from these like kind of really grating odd numbers. Like there's one beat that sounds like it's playing in reverse on
Oh,
Pepper Tree.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like as soon as you said that, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah,
Which
and
is
it's
so strange and surreal. And then yeah, lots of us is just really like woozy and like atmospheric and like, where Fantastic Damage is like real like city industrial. Lots of this
yeah,
feels almost like spiritual industrial, like fucking spirits like clamoring from their graves. Like I don't know, it's it's really something.
it is so incredibly unique, and I think the versatility thing is the best thing to point out here. But it's really consistent. Like even a song like "Roaches Don't Fly," which is one of the most smooth sounding
Mm.
songs in this album, it's really odd. Like the beat is really into that spiritual niche that you're talking about. There's something very like almost magical about the way that beat's melody kind of
Mhm.
pops and pings.
Yeah.
Uh, I
It,
love it so much, and
it
like it's just such an organic progression from each tone of the album that it has to each other. The imagery is so vivid as well. Like I think just all of it is like all of the track titles are just so slightly
Bro,
like
the titles feel like bars. Like roaches don't
yeah,
fly. That's a bar.
yeah, Roaches Don't Fly, Pepper Tree, Wishing Bad. Like they all just have this slightly like twisted
Chicharrones.
feeling to them.
Another thing is I'll bring it up like roaches don't fly.
Mm.
Amazing track featuring only
Yeah,
Elucid, which is like woefully short. This should be a full
I
length track. I don't
know, I
know why.
know.
I don't. I think Sir Benny Miles stole minutes from Roaches Don't Fly, and I think and he's. I don't know. I feel like Roaches should have been the first track, and it should have been longer. But whatever. I love how even though it has a like otherworldly, ethereal feeling at points, a dark ethereal kind of vibe. There's lots of like pastiche here, which feeds into like I guess like the humor of the album. Like I think
Mm,
Roaches Don't Fly sounds like a 70s like exploitation crime show with like the cheesy electronic
yeah,
guitars that come in for like the opening of like Miami Vice or some shit. And then
yeah,
near the end with um Robert Moses, the saxophones for like noir, like grimy, like 40s the Bronx kind of scenery, right? I do think they're drawing on like a kind of crime drama fiction with
yeah,
this type of palette with the beats.
yeah.
Which I guess feeds into the album cover, maybe.
No,
Uh
I agree. I agree. But obviously, you can't do a crime pastiche and put pigs, like dead pigs, on your album cover and not have the reference there. But to me, there's something. For me, I feel like the pigs are Elicid and Billy. Like, there's
oh
something
shit,
so
yeah.
like I don't know. Like, they just like if we're characterizing them as like kind of like the crime element of this album, then there's something in that of just like how like brutal and rough this album sounds, and just how like the what's the boldness of that album cover. Just it's so blunt. It really feels like that's that if we're going with this crime thing, that's them right there. But also, but I
Yeah.
don't want to ignore the pigs,
Well,
the
it's
pigs
it's it's
imagery.
weird because like when I saw like the album title, the album cover, I politely asked our artist to not include the dead pigs on the cover of the podcast because I
It
do think it is like a shocking,
is disgusting. Yeah.
upsetting image.
It is really.
But
I'm
like
looking at it right now, and I'm like, this is fucking gross.
along with the title Haram, I really thought it was like a very clear kind of like almost morbidly playful image of like dead cops.
Yeah,
Cops are haram. This is a haram image
yeah.
of like how not to kill pigs, right? Uh, uh, but Billy Woods has been like surprisingly like evasive about this in interviews. Like I was reading one from the OK Player interview.
Mm.
Um, where he says like he picked it out because like it was definitely like repulsive to an extent, but there was also something like
Yeah.
quote unquote painterly about it. Like it's grotesque, but it's really arresting. Like you really want to look at it.
I know exactly. It's the lighting for me. I think
Yeah.
about it. There's something so, I will say, oddly inviting about
I mean,
that
it
image.
it sounds like a perverse expression of almost like a Cézanne painting of like a bowl of fruit, but instead of fruit, it's like dead pig heads, right?
Dead
Like
pig heads.
it's food being prepared, but in like the most grotesque way. And he did insist that he didn't want it to be taken as literal. Like he admits there is a abolish police sentiment that could be read into it, but he didn't
Yeah,
want that to be the only. Didn't want to limit
that's the
the album to
thing.
that. Um,
Because
yeah.
obviously Armand Hammer are a like staunchly left wing, like anti-capitalist hip hop duo.
Oh, really?
I would say so. I mean, like "Kill
Man,
Your
that's crazy.
Landlord" rhetoric is on
I'm
all over this album.
I'm joking around.
Oh,
Oh, for real?
yeah. I was baffled. I was like,
You didn't catch the part in Aubergine where he talks about like how cool Ayn Rand is?
yeah.
No, no, go on.
That God's Feet is all about Ben Shapiro's foot fetish. What's it called? But so,
Yeah, Robert
um,
Moses is actually
but
about Jeff Bezos.
yeah,
To
uh,
quote Bo Burnham, go on, Jeff, get him.
like
I'm sorry.
I love and obviously this on this podcast we're fucking here for that. We live that shit. But I also like there's the songs on this are
Mm,
all themselves dense, evocative worlds
mm,
that I don't want to just get like a strictly like left wing political reading from. There's so much going on here, like you said,
mm,
spiritually. I mean, the album is also like it's called Haram. Like they are drawing up religious imagery constantly within their work, and
yeah.
I mean that's one amazing way they give meaning to like political movement and struggle, which is
Mm,
something I love so much about them. They bring out the heart in politics so beautifully. Because I mean, the heart in politics is always there. I mean, if you're coming at it from the right place, that is. You just have to draw it out in a, like I said, evocative way. And these guys just have such a naturalistic approach to like the way they rap and write. Like honestly, over all of these beats, like it's 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 handcrafted, it feels like, but in such a way that they can just spit relentlessly, like without seeming like they're exhausting themselves at all. And it is masterful. It's masterful. I honestly, in the way that they rap, I don't think like anyone can touch them.
mm. I think that in terms of what you're saying about the album's world being bigger than just like, yeah, fuck the cops, you know, like it's going for something a bit more grandiose than that.
Mm.
Um, I think maybe to return to like the pig imagery, there is also, I think I found a returning kind of motif in this album of kind of those left on the outliers, like those left on the outside, kind of
Mm.
like, you know, pigs who get slaughtered kind of horribly.
Yeah.
Like I think there's also a likening to that. Like with the song Pepper Tree, you get these lines about it. That Pepper Tree for me seems to be about kind of the periphery of society, the forgotten, the neglected. You know, lines like
Yeah.
silent except for children crying. And my favorite line from the song, dogs beg for scraps at the edge of the hearth, but it's something else out there in the dark, something else out there in the dark. Like fuck, dude. Like being unfed, you know,
Yeah.
being prepared for the to be eaten by the rich, right?
Yeah.
There was a song Indian Summer, yeah, where he's rapping about kind of this menial, tedious jobs and this like deep resentment it gave him. I swore vengeance in the seventh grade, not on one man but the whole human race. Every debt gets paid, like, you know, there is a sense of parts of just the spiritual struggle of this album is this neglect, like this kind of starving.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Yeah.
I in that way, yeah, this is I keep coming back to the album cover with this, but yeah, I just think we keep coming back to that because it just pins down all of the themes so well because with the album cover you just have this like rejected, bloody, brutal part of the meat, like not really like in terms of the 1% and things like that.
Mm,
No member of the 1% is going to be consuming this meat. It's not really productive as
mm,
food goes unless you're really boiling it down to its raw elements.
mm,
And like I just think that's so true. Like it's all over this. Like on Wishing Bad, Elicid kind of dips into um like the stories of sex workers and
mm,
like the like describing like the the line, I wish she'd get out more, Killer Miller, wild outlaw mouth sores, all in her feeling like a maelstrom.
mm,
Like that's so like this is what I mean by worlds, like because you're right to bring up the fact that these are like outliers and people that get left neglected from society, and they don't just it's not pastiche, it's not like just a broad overlook. Like this is the nature of their lyrics go so unflinchingly into the reality of that world that I keep bringing up, and that's something I love so much about the lyricism, which again plays back to that damn album cover, is that it's always unflinching. It's always been unflinching in just depicting like brutal reality,
mm.
and that's something it's so in common with Fantastic Damage. Just these like wonderfully poetic bars, but when you actually and they sound wonderful and the rhyming is so impressive, but when you actually like not even dig into them, but when you just hear and recognize the reality of what they're describing,
Mm.
it's so stark and really difficult to grapple with. And I will always love coming back to Armand Hammer songs and digging like my teeth in and just like it's a bleak act a lot of the time, but you find there are oftentimes a lot of moments of joy, a lot of moments of humor that really carry their art through.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think no one does it like them. I'm not saying like they're the best of the best ever, but I just think no one does it like them.
They're up there. I think to kind of like rattle off, I guess, some of my favorite lines, which I want to highlight,
Mm,
that might not get covered in the favorite and least favorite track section, is like regarding what you were saying about kind of the beauty that can be found in their work and
mm,
a sort of like sweetness underneath the kind of rot, right?
mm,
I think a lot about the song God's Feet, where it seems to be describing thinking about where the dead go, and this idea of I kind of read it as like a sad sort of forlorn kind of religious fantasy that they know, there's a line in the album, I can't afford to believe in what I can't see, right?
mm,
Of this idea of like people who never had anything while they were living somehow being rewarded in death.
mm,
When it's time, you won't have to think, you'll just do in the blink of an eye, the faithful go where they are made whole, so the story goes. And he describes like
yeah.
this lush banquet being made for the dead coming home. And you get the
Mm,
sense there's like an irony here, like they don't really believe that this justifies suffering, or that everyone who suffered in the life due to these kind of horrible systems are rewarded in death, but it's getting to like how evocative and um tragic it is that we have to have these kind of fantasies.
yeah.
I love that line.
No, that's so beautiful because that really just gets to the heart of spirituality under capitalist conditions.
Mm,
Uh, Without being like this cold, kind of incisive takedown of like how people find ways of like dealing with immense suffering. Uh, it's actually like really quite warm and like I don't know.
yeah,
I would say affectionate, but empathetic and understanding.
yeah. Another thing that you said earlier that I want to pick up on is how they use really like visceral and disgusting and sad imagery to get across kind of again softer emotional truths. Even to like the features on this album, like one of my favorite lines in this is from an old sweatshirt. He pretty much opens his verse with my father body swollen behind my eyes. I ain't cried for him in time. And this idea of like the dead body of your father, like behind your eyelids, and that is like a blockade that prevents you from properly processing the grief. It's
Yeah.
such a gross and visceral image, but it gets across like a very like down to earth kind of truth. And it's
Yeah.
important. I think it's important to note that this album isn't completely like it's very obviously deeply political, but not like completely abstracted from kind of just like very like everyday down to earth kind of feelings, I guess.
No, completely. It's really hard to get across, but because I think it's reductive to boil down human struggle purely to the political, like even if all of our existence is defined by that. And I think that's what this album isn't trying to do, because at the end of the day, we can only define our actual experience by viscerality. And that, yeah, on this album, people get things across so incredibly well in terms of visceral things. Like when you're talking about like just eyes, it is honestly a really like it really rang with me because rang a bell with me because it's incredibly similar to another image on or Aubergine, where he says, "I'm stubborn. I am my mother's love measured in eyedroppers." Like that is, I don't know that that's so like heartbreaking to me. I honestly couldn't tell you what that means, even with context. But
Yeah.
I read that and I listen to it and it's just deeply upsetting to me.
I think that like with Aubergine, that track, the Billy Woods verse seems to widely, I guess, Lucid as well, like be about kind of the healing and communally kind of therapeutic aspect of the work of making art, making music. You have the line, "This is breath for the winded, clarify, clarity if conflicted. I'm in the now, I'm in the now. This is a vengeance, radical ascension." So I get like the eye drop thing of my mother's love is the idea like this is like something to this is like ointment to kind of ail the wounds of our community, right? So eye drops is
Mm,
like, ointment.
yeah, and
so
cleansing as
yeah,
well.
so I get
Yeah.
the idea of the music is healing, and the juxtaposition of that with just how gross and disgusting like the cover is and a lot of the lyricism is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are
Yeah.
you ready to move on to favorite and least favorite
Yeah, I
tracks?
absolutely am.
Awesome. I'll let you start, and if we share any, I will chip in with my thoughts at the
Perfect.
end of yours.
Perfect. I'm gonna start with Black Sunlight.
Damn. Bingo.
I adore this song. I'm just getting the lyrics up right now. Uh Took the haze to church, frankincense and myrrh, the whole thing was a blur. Laughed at first, brothers politics absurd
Hmm.
is perhaps the best opening bars to a Armand Hammer song ever. This beat again. This is more in the Roaches Don't Fly vein of like really actually quite melodic. And again, however, like interestingly enough, it kind of contrasts because it's actually quite directly political. Like it's actually talking about like I love the line politics absurd. Like
Mm.
because it's such a vivid image of just hearing this guy's views and just laughing. And then they go
Yeah.
on to say iridescent blackness is this
Mm.
performative or praxis, like,
Yeah.
and just like again you just get such a visceral sense of like how this world functions and like how constantly you are forced to question the line between like making do with your surroundings and like just getting by, or like are you actually an actual radical uplifting change that they're trying to get across? And this is such a brutally honest song, I feel, about their community and specifically like black politics in their community.
Mm.
And it's which is like so that honesty is like quite, what's the word, just honestly surprising, and like incredibly captivating. I'm mainly talking about Billy Woods and Kayana's opening verse here, but I just adore this song. I just adore everything about this. I love that contrast that I brought up between like being on the more melodic side and being actually really difficult to grapple with, especially not being from that community. Like,
Well, I think you can get it. It's just like it's an argument of like a liberal who has the same like identity signifiers as you do. You
mm,
know, like if I had a political conversation with like Obama, right? Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it would be tough. In the same way as I'm sure you'd struggle with certain members of the LGBT community who are more liberal.
No, exactly. It is for anyone who's like just oppressed. Like, there's always going to be people like that, and it is like, man, is it a fucking hard thing to deal with. It really feels, honestly, to me, this is how I take it, like a betrayal and like kind of world ending, because it's like, oh god, this is such an easy thing to grapple on with. It's so easy to just want to like co-opt and conform, and I really am like terrified in this moment about that appeal, that like desire to of like rainbow capitalism or black capitalism, and how like easy and appealing it is to conform to that. So yeah,
Mm.
like 100%, I get where this is coming
Yeah,
from.
and Black Sunlight is one of my favorite tracks as well. So another thing I really like about it is how playful the interplay between Alchemist production and the rapping is. They seem to adapt to each other in a really like organic way. The best example of this is in Elusive's verse. I love the way his flow switches. In the line of "I don't want to riff blood, I don't want to explain myself," as the beat itself like warbles with a lovely like vocal bridge. It's really like magical, and then he goes back to the flow he was doing for the rest of the song, but it's this really weird, almost like psychedelic effect, which I
Mm.
really love. And then my favorite bar in this line is the Billy Wood shit that you cited, and I love how like Billy Woods is like the the weird philosophical member of the duo is
I
like super
love him
apparent
so
in this
much.
album, but especially
Yeah,
here with the the kind of like pompousness of like laughed at first, these people's politics are absurd. Uh,
yeah.
and then the next line, cook books with the bookworms. I love that line, and even with what you were saying about iridescent blackness, is this performative or praxis? Are we talking about practice? Like, I think that really
Yeah.
speaks to the kind of uh, political project, like the positive political project of the album, because he starts off kind of criticizing this idea of like iridescent blackness as just
Mm.
performative. But the fact that it's brought back as in motif with like Elucid and Indian Woods, kind of just saying iridescent black, kind of almost as a way to like retain that word and like replace the
Reclaim
performance
it,
aspect of
or
it
yeah.
with actual praxis.
Yeah,
Speaks to like the positive political project of the album. So I think that was really powerful.
that's so true. I that I last word on that song, I know we've minced about it a lot, but god, it really gets home just how just I have so much political respect for these two people. Like, they are the perfect amount of balance between like, let's make fucking real radical change that we have now, but they're totally like not like anti-intellectual or just like anti-thought. Essentially, like, they're not purely physical, and yeah, they're so equally spiritual and joyful and radical all at the same time. Like I have so much love for that. And
Mhm.
like I don't want to put people on too much of a pedestal and things like that, because obviously, just people are people and people have all kind of facets to them. But just purely in that regard, I love how there is so much within these two people that can coexist, especially as a duo. Like you were saying, Billy Woods is really heady, and Ellie Sid is quite like upfront and joyful, especially on this album. And like, yeah, I just love that specifically about them as a duo, and I think Black Sunlight really brings that across.
But yeah, dude, like shout out to my to any other people who studied philosophy at home. Speaking of Billy Woods is like the weird heady member. I love he references Foucault, Deleuze, and Guattari in the space of like 10 seconds in Wishing Bad. With the line, worms in all your thoughts, 1,000 plateaus, a constellation of prisons, ocean of archipelagos. A little bit later on, voices and ventilation float different. Foucault, core collect. Bruh. That, man, he's really doing it for this.
He's really coming out. He's really coming out for black philosophers right now, man.
But go on.
No. So next up, it's got to be Falling Out the Sky. Oh, this is Mark's their second feature with El Sweatshirt on it. But one thing I want to hit up with this song is the interlude where they sample, I believe, a David Lynch interview. It's a brief, like 4-line thing. But as soon as I realized that, it made me reflect again on how cinematic a duo these are, and I think it's that cinematic element that really brings home the apocalyptic feeling of the duo, like the grandeur essentially that I mean by cinematic that's implied by all of this stuff really grounds that like world bending and ending feeling of their bars and of all the beats on this song, even the more relaxing and soulful ones. But at the same time, I've said that this is probably the smoothest, most purely melodic and major sounding beat on this album, and it's gorgeous, but it actually contrasts against Earl kind of discussing the implications of like his father's death and things like and such things. And it's really incredible seeing how fitting a rapper he is for these two. He honestly makes Billy and Elucid sound like a lot more intense. He really actually brings home how an intense and dense lyricists they are. With his verse actually coming off really relaxed and but equally composed at the same time. I can just go on straight onto my final favorite track.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet, and that would be Squeegee. Squeegee is dark and weird and scary, and I don't know. I love it, and I love it. I love that incredibly strange piano sample that just kind of feels like it's collapsing on top of the two of them rapping every time. And then within this, you have, I believe it's Billy singing like in this ghostly like way, just Sin City, like lamenting over it. It's so bizarre. It's such a bizarre track. And I think this is so descendant of fantastic damage in specifically that feeling of apocalypse that I keep getting to.
Yeah. As someone who doesn't account the word squeegee a lot, it made me think of Squeegee Man shooting.
Yeah, exactly. Like I remember seeing that and double taking and thinking it can't be anything but a reference.
I wish they could time travel to rap with 2001 era LP.
Oh, it would be amazing. Yeah, I can do my least favorite track as well, which um oftentimes on this podcast I had it written down, and oftentimes on this podcast, like, I find I'm discovering things about my opinions. I mean, that's just how reviews work. I think reviews often are an exercise in discovering how you actually feel about something while you're making it. Um, and I had my least favorite song down as God's Feet, because I felt
Hmm.
I felt simply that um it I could lose it very easily. Like, there's not a huge amount of I didn't find the instrumental particularly like groundbreaking. I found it one of the most, like, just the most uninteresting beat of the album. And uh I have no problems with, like, the vocalizing on this song, and it's all vocalizing, really, like vocalized lyrics, sung lyrics on this song. But it just ran on a bit long. But as you were saying those things about it, Josh, I loved what you had to say about the lyrical content of this song. Um, and it honestly doesn't really feel right calling it my least favorite song anymore. Not that I'm gonna, like, I'll leave it there for now, because, like, I don't want to just arbitrarily pick another least favorite song last minute.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be a good review. but
Yeah.
but that was down as my original.
In defense of God's Feet, I guess. I do think really was verse like with its kind of thematic concern of like just transitory death experience kind of contextualizes like the woozy ethereal beat. So like even though I don't think it has like arresting as the other beats, I do think it's like thematically whole, and that really
Yeah.
like works for me.
No, definitely. Like,
So would you recommend the album?
I would give it a strong recommend. It's just another amazing episode in Armand Hammer's discography, which I haven't heard the whole thing of yet, but these are surely one of the most consistent hip hop groups and duos. I say groups because although this is a duo, I think these should be included amongst the highest of, like, hip hop groups of all time. I love this album. Strong recommend.
Sweet, and I'll go through my favorite tracks, these favorite tracks. So yeah, like you, Black Sunlight. Said my piece on that song. Earlier on. Next up, Chicharrones. Um, I'm a huge fan of Kelly Chris. Also, like one of the best rappers working right now. So seeing him on this track list, like right next to Earl Sweatshirt, like, whew, that really got me excited. And I mean, yeah, we've talked a lot. This hits the kind of morbid, politically radical themes covered a lot of the album. So I'll just say like my two favorite kind of lines from this song. I really like Billy Wood's kind of motif of "you gotta kill the cop in your thoughts, the cop in your head," and he's got this line. Kill the cop in your head, the officer in your mind, red-handed. Chicharrones was chili and lime. The idea of like preparing dead cops as food and flavoring it with chili and lime. That shit was hard, bro. And then I also really love Kenny Chris is amazing at like a hook, and this is like he always murders a hook, but this is up there for me of like one of his best. Of the "oh you big and bad," blowing hay and sticks, huffing bricks, clip the snout, spike the mouth, put it on a spit, pig roast. Who got jokes? Like, oh shit. Like the fucking nursery, like blending the most grotesque cannibalistic imagery with like nursery rhyme kind of the three little piggies.
That's the sense of humor of this world.
It's extremely good.
And it's so great.
Extremely good. And next up, like my favorite track in the album, possibly because it's like such a weird, in my opinion, like weird outlier on the album, is the closer, Stone Fruit, which feels like really odd thematically. It feels like a breakup song, right? Like Billy's verse.
It's a very nostalgic sounding song. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, And to be on the case, because I know that sounds weird, but like Billy Woods in his verse describes to like whenever I listen to this, I really feel like it really resonates with me as kind of like falling out with a someone you used to be with, and this kind of the odd combination of still caring for each other in a sort of way, but there's also resentment there. You know, he describes you said okay to save face, but she never forgave. There's only so many ways you can say grace. In truth, she'd rather cry at your grave. All black regalia, we back not speaking. Like that feels like a very down to earth describing the fallout of a relationship, right? To be honest, and then
Yeah, no, definitely.
my favorite one of my favorite lines on the song is this like weird allusion he does to Lord Byron. Byron has a poem where he writes about drinking from a skull, right? And there's this line he kind of creates this image of them having sex with each other, and it melds with like this hellish death imagery of kind of the end of this relationship, right? She left what was left in the ditch. She dreamed of the sex. She finished on top and howled in the crook of my neck. She dragged the bones home and built a bed. She drank rosé out the skull, but held it gentle as my living head. And like, Jesus, man, that image is so evocative, and I do feel like it must be like metaphor for something wider because this whole album was so grandiose. I don't know, maybe it's a metaphor for like I don't know, but I do like it as a simple kind of breakup song. It really like it's really evocative and powerful.
Yeah.
And it works for that. Again, it just feels so thematically out as an outlier, right? Like that. I'm like, God, this has to be like a reference to something. And I really want it to just be like sad boy Billy Woods raps. Like I could do a whole album of that. Like he describes it in a tremendously beautiful way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really adore that track. And then my least favorite track is Sir Benny Mouse. I think it's fine. I just think it's a bit of like a lukewarm opener. And I really wish Roaches Don't Fly was the opener and got to be longer. And that's the only reason I resent Sir Benny Mouse for taking the opening spot, basically. And yeah, I'd give this a really strong recommend. It's pretty fantastic. There's not really much flawed in it. I guess the only thing maybe, and I guess Matty brought this up a bit in her discussion of God's Feet, is I do think some of the beats can kind of blend together a little bit. Like not every track is as distinctive as like a Black Sunlight or a Chicharrones. But that's a really minor complaint. And overall, like this is a phenomenal achievement of an album. So super strong recommend.
Hell yeah.
So Matthew, what are we talking about next week?
We waited, but it's time. It's time for Shiva, baby. This is like sort of LGBTQ comedy drama that we're going to be talking about next week, and I'm just going to save it all for the review.
Yeah.
So
I gotta watch that with my flatmate. Night of release. So it will be a review.
It will be a review. There we go. Okay.
So follow us on socials for updates on future episodes, and yeah, we'll catch you later.
Thanks very much for listening.
Kill the cop in your head.
Kill the cop in your fucking head.
Bye.